In Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, Anthony Ramos' character and his little brother call each other Sonic and Tails, which is not only adorable, but happens to be another Paramount movie franchise. Oh, synergy! And I'd say that like that film, this one skews more towards family entertainment and being for kids, or kids at heart, who grew up loving the franchise. There Sonic, here Transformers. Rather than the broader appeal of Michael Bay's earlier films, two of which made $1 billion. I know, it seems weird now, but they did. Transformers Rise of the Beasts is closer, obviously, to 2018's Bumblebee, of which it's kind of a sequel. Another charming family film, but which only brought in less than $500 million. So it confuses me as to why Paramount and Hasbro would spend $200 million, far more than Bumblebee's budget, on a similar sequel, not even including advertising. It's too much money. It's too much money for what they have here. Although I do feel like a lot of it's on screen, to be fair. Now, don't get me wrong, Transformers Rise of the Beasts certainly has its moments, but for me, it's not a home run, especially in a crowded month like this year's June. Paramount is still treating this Transformers franchise like the four-quadrant one that it once was under Bay, when the reality is, again, that it's become more of a smaller family franchise. I mean, if Transformers can't be made for less money, although Bumblebee, again, was cheaper, then I think you should think about that when writing your script and constructing your film. So first let me talk about what I didn't like about the movie before talking about what I did. I did like some stuff for sure. Now, to be fair, I'm not a huge Transformers fan. So, I mean, I've seen all the movies. I enjoyed them for the popcorn fare that they were. I kind of like some of Michael Bay's movies, even though, as many people have said, I often had no idea what I was looking at because it's all over the place. But, I appreciated them for what they were while they were in their heyday. But I'm not going to get excited about like this movie like a hardcore fan would. And to be fair, in my early fan screening, I missed the press screening, so I went to the early fan screening last night. And I'm glad that I did, because I saw that there were some moments that certainly went over very well with hardcore fans. I was able to enjoy parts of the movie for sure, to be clear, but I didn't really connect with it. And I think it had some problems. All right, so there's no reason for this to take place in the past. Why is this 1994? It's totally unnecessary and not at all integral to the plot. I think you could argue, it's because it comes after Bumblebee, which took place even earlier. I didn't really think that needed to be a period piece. And this is so loosely connected to Bumblebee, only that Bumblebee really still has the same design, it just doesn't make any sense. Then there's the general bleed over amongst all big movies these days. This isn't just a Transformers problem. This is a problem for a lot of movies, but particularly this one. Hollywood is scared of original ideas, as we all know. So they love to look over each other's shoulders and copy from each other's papers. But all these movies, as a result, are starting to blend together. So Transformers Rise of the Beasts, to me, often felt like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, particularly the upcoming one. That's going to be so late to the party, man, after this in Spider-Verse. Indiana Jones, which they even directly referenced, and it sometimes felt a lot like Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies, just to name a few. And also, Luna Lauren Velez, as great an actress as she is, here she is playing the mom in back-to-back movies. I mean, I certainly noticed her. Maybe some other people won't. Her role is much smaller here. And I certainly don't want to get Luna Lauren Velez not to get as much work, but, it just adds to these movies all seeming very similar. Instead, I wish this new era of Transformers would create its own vibe. I mean, for better or worse, Michael Bay lent the franchise his very distinct vibe. In fact, he leaned into it when he was making almost exclusively Transformers movies for a couple of years there. You know what there was, the lens flare, the slow-mo, the yellow filter. You knew what a Michael Bay, and at that point, for that era, what a Transformers movie looked like. Also, if the whole selling point of your movie is the debut of the Maximals, it's sort of a letdown, at least to me, that they weren't in a lot of the movie, as once again we focus primarily on Optimus Prime and his crew. I was like, I thought this movie was about the Maximals. Then finally, when it comes to my issues with the film, then we'll get to the good stuff. The third act suffers from being an overkill CGI fest that sort of loses the thread of the story. I mean, if someone like myself kind of checks out during your third act, and I love comic books and blockbuster movies, I think you kind of didn't stick the landing. Maybe hardcore fans can stay more dialed in, but I was like, is this movie still going? You know, it reminded me of a lot of the poorer third acts in Transformers movies where it just becomes too much tech on screen. You're like, how are more people not aware of what's going on here? They have like all these horrible apocalyptic events like in somewhere on the globe, and they're like, oh, people just aren't noticing, I guess. And you're like, where's the military? All right, so as for what I did like about the film, Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback are both excellent here with very dynamic roles. And as Hollywood tries to diversify leading roles, these are two excellent steps forward, at least creatively. Fingers crossed for the box office. They don't do them any favors when they saddle them with Ramos and Fishback with a ridiculously large budget, but then a smaller scope script. So far, only really Will Smith, who worked very hard. He studied movies. He studied box office and formulas, and he was able to engineer himself to be a lead in blockbuster films that went on to box office victory. Now, Ramos, who got on Hollywood's radar thanks to Hamilton and has had a couple of misfires ever since, he has his best role here to date, and he doesn't waste the opportunity. He's very appealing, and I believe relatable, especially to those hoping for more Latino representation in movies. Ramos's character also gets, let's say, an upgrade, and I suspect the kids will think it's cool, but that no adult would be caught dead in it. It's very Spy Kids. I'm surprised that design was approved. And speaking of little kids, though, Dean Scott Vasquez is his little brother. Adorable! And what a little tough guy. He was great. So good. Such a strong child actor. I liked him a lot. As for Dominique Fishback, I really loved her performance in Project Power. That's where I first saw her. I'm so thrilled that she got this franchise, and she does a great job here in what's a really well-written female role. I liked it a lot. Okay, so those are the humans. How about all the Transformers? Well, first off, the designs of the Autobots, Maximals, and Terrorcons, I picked that up, are all stunning and brought to life extremely well by the VFX team. I've seen, as I said, all the Transformers movies, and I've never seen them look as good as they do here. Sure, they're still very busy visually, but every whirly-do seems to have a purpose, and they transform a lot, often mid-action and mid-air, flying around. I was like, that's cool. That's cool. While Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime is a legend, an icon, here he's not used that much. Pete Davidson really is front and center as Mirage. And I gotta say, he actually does a pretty good job. I liked his Mirage a lot, particularly opposite Ramos. I thought they made a good team. And with this and Spider-Verse and Ezra Miller's Barry 2 in The Flash, I feel that Hollywood is finally catching up and able to capture the modern way that a lot of people conduct themselves today. And so that's really kind of cool to see. You're like, you guys finally caught up. I love it. All the other voice work is, of course, excellent. And Peter Dinklage does a great job as Scourge, although I didn't recognize his voice while watching the film. I was like, Scourge is kind of cool. And then after, when I was looking through the credits to do this review, I was like, that was Peter Dinklage? Wow, why didn't he do any publicity for this movie? I did recognize Michelle Yeoh as Airazor, who has a very cool dark storyline. I was like, oh, that's dark for, that's the darkest this movie got. Pretty dark for a kid's movie. I liked it. I think kids will be like, that was cool. And Danny Rojas from Ted Lasso. I thought that was him. Cristo Fernandez is a former professional footballer turned actor for Ted Lasso, but he's actually, I think, really good. He has very good comedic timing and a lot of heart, and I'm so happy to see him getting additional acting work. His career might live on, maybe even in Ted Lasso Season 4, interestingly enough. And of course, I recognized Ron Perlman as Optimus Primal. Again, amazing character design. How did the Maximals have fur? That wasn't really explained to me, but it was interesting. But anyway, I'm getting a little tired of Ron Perlman's voice. I've just seen him or heard him so often at this point. With all due respect, I just think he's overexposed. As for Bumblebee, because it takes me out of it. I'm like, oh, it's Ron Perlman. And when instead I'd like to be, that's Optimus Primal. I did think it was Pete Davidson as Mirage, but, at least he had a bigger role, and it was cool to see Pete Davidson doing something new with this kind of voice work, whereas Ron Perlman has just done this again so many times. As for Bumblebee, they did a very nice job with choosing the sound bites with which he uses to communicate. Optimus Prime had a good comeback on one of those. I like that. And he has some of the best fan moments in the movie. In fact, there was one moment that made my whole audience, which again was very fan-filled, cheer. Broke out in a big cheer. This is a big step up production-wise for Creed 2 director Stephen Caple Jr. It's hard to jump into such a VFX-heavy production, especially when you haven't worked with VFX extensively before. And most directors have a learning curve. They need one film to kind of get their legs, which is why VFX legs, which is why you'll often see like a director's first foray into visual effects be only okay, but then they really level up when they move forward with the sequel and beyond. But Stephen Caple Jr., I think his first foray into a VFX heavy film is quite good. Particularly the first half of the film. I think that's where it really shined. I don't think this is going to shoot him to the top of any studio director lists because it's more competent than wow. You know, there wasn't anything that I think really gave him a voice as a director on screen, but it was very well executed. So I definitely think he'll work again because of that, and also because now he's shown a tremendous amount of range between this and Creed 2. And also there aren't a ton of directors who are really good with VFX, and he certainly has proven to be one of those. He even said they had like a pre-thing. I don't know if they're going to show that with everything, but in front of the early fan screening, they had 8 minutes. I was like, let's just start the movie already. They had an 8-minute reel with trivia and behind-the-scenes interviews. And Stephen Caple Jr. talked about how he had also worked on the designs of the Transformers. And I think that's one of the best things that he contributed to the film. And I don't know if he'll continue with this franchise. I think he could. I think he could, actually, you know, if they lower the budget. And on that note, there is an end credit scene of sorts. It plays like an end credit scene, but it's actually the end of the movie. There's no credits. It goes right to this. And then they have the credits. But it seems to set up an interesting direction, let's say, for Hasbro properties going forward. But I wonder if at this point, anyone will really care, except, again, you know, families and diehard fans. I certainly hope that they can keep the budget to $100 million or less. I would not greenlight another $100 million plus budget for a Transformers movie unless they make significant changes to the formula. So that's my review of Transformers Rise of the Beasts. A lot of nice work here, a lot of nice work. But as a film, I think, again, it's really more for diehard fans and families than general audiences. And you certainly don't need to see it in theaters. I feel bad saying that. You know, theaters are still, to some degree, struggling a little bit. You know, they're still kind of at war with streaming services, but, you know, make better movies. I think there's, especially during, again, such a crowded month, you can, I mean, most people have a really big screen TV. You can watch this then. You can watch it then. So share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.